Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg.
And I'm Mark Tucker. Welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Hello, and welcome to the IO edition of Two Voice Devs.
Yes, we've talked about this numerous times in anticipation, and it's here and it's just happened, and now we get to talk about it.
We do. This will be the third year that we've covered IO like this. And by like this, we mean remotely, because I did not get a chance to go this year. Otherwise, we would have hopefully recorded it live from the Shoreline Amphitheater, but instead we have this beautiful backdrop for me instead. But I am otherwise adorned as I would have had I actually been there.
Yeah. So, just overall, first impressions. How was it this year at Google I/O? Good stuff, new stuff, any surprises, things like that?
There were no surprises whatsoever, I think, really. I mean, there were a couple. There were, I think, the highlight of IO clearly was AI. It was
AI.
a massive, massive AI focus this year, which is no surprise. But it's interesting to see some of the things that they did, so in some ways they said things like, hey, you remember this feature that we rolled out 7 years ago? Well, that was AI. And then when we updated it to do this, well, that was AI. And now we're updating it again with even more AI.
So Google has been using AI for a long time. So make sure you can trust us and use these
Right.
tools. And we didn't really talk about it back when it wasn't hip, but now that it's hip, then we'll let you know that everything is AI.
We need to remind you of the fact that, we were doing this before it was cool. And some of it makes a good case, and other elements kind of show that integration interestingly. Bard, now has some very interesting integrations with other Google services. You'll be able to, if you've asked Bard to draft an email for you, with 2 clicks, it will show up in Gmail. There's no cutting and pasting; it's just there. And there were a couple of other places where you saw that kind of integration in interesting and clever ways. So we'll really see where that goes in the long term.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about some of the things that are probably most relevant to this show, and that's all of the announcements about the Google Assistant at I/O.
All right, ready?
Ready.
Go for it.
Okay.
No,
and now that we've got,
okay. So that was it.
That was it.
Okay. All right.
There were precisely 0 mentions of the Google Assistant. We saw the logo flash by a couple of times, but that was about it.
There's kind of a voice, I don't know, home device they talked about.
Well, there's a home device that they talked about. And to be fair, the Google Home app got a major upgrade during I/O, but the new device, although it looks a lot like a smart display, it's not. It's a tablet with a docking station. And that's kind of significant, because they basically are saying the smart displays weren't working out so well. So we're going to try this instead. We're going to give you a full-blown tablet that you can take with you and carry around. And when you're done with it for the day, you put it on its dock and it acts like a smart display used to act, only better. Because now it's also going to have apps and apps.
And we'll use your profiles and
well, but here's the thing.
Chromecasting to the tablet, which is the recharger is a speaker.
Well, okay, so let's
smart home stuff. So there are some
elements there that are significant, yes, but let's keep a couple of things in mind. Chromecast to the tablet. That this is true. This is the first tablet that will support working as a Chromecast receiver, and that's a big deal. but all of the Google Home displays were Chromecast receivers.
True.
I could cast to them without a problem. And yes, it will be great that you can control your home automation devices from the home screen while it's docked, but you could do that on smart displays now. And yes, it's got a speaker in the base, and that's good, but that speaker in the base isn't a smart speaker. So if you've got the tablet off of the base, you have nothing. Well, it only works if the tablet is docked to it.
Interesting.
And yes, there are user profiles on the tablet, but only when it's in tablet mode, not when it's apparently not when it's actually in the docked mode. Then it's in a shared family mode, which has limited access to all of the apps. So, okay, this is not bad, but at 4 times the price of a smart display today.
Yeah, was it like $4.99 or something like
Yeah.
that?
So it's 4 to 5 times the price of a smart display today. What are you getting? You're not getting a smart display. You're getting a tablet.
There was one demo I saw where they kind of did a quick talk to it, kind of ask it questions type of thing. So there is some voice capability, but they definitely didn't highlight it. It wasn't really, they didn't talk about it. I think they even used if I'm remembering right, they used the word voice helper. They didn't even say assistant. I don't know if they just didn't want to get any confusion at all that assistant was on the tablet or.
Right. Well, I think that kind of goes to the point of where app actions have been going.
Right.
Is, they're not voice first. You're not creating these voice apps. You've got something that is voice forward. So you can invoke your app by voice and then interact with your app.
Yeah.
By, conventional means. My opinion on that is kind of mixed. There are things, and I've been excited about where app actions were going in the past, and I'm still, somewhat interested in that. But I think what we've seen in the past 6 months are amazing capabilities of conversational AIs. And I think this is a missed opportunity. A missed opportunity even to say, this is what we're working on. Because they had lots of coming later this summer, coming later this year. They did that a lot.
They did.
But, there was no hint that a more conversational Google Assistant, perhaps even a conversational Google Assistant named Bard, is anywhere on the table.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see this like even Amazon was talking about, they're working with LLMs. They haven't really talked about exactly how that's going to manifest itself, or if it's first party experience, or if third party developers could get in on that. Nothing's really been announced, but with all the talk of AI these last 6 months or even 3 or 4 months,
all the talk of AI at the IO, at IO itself.
That was silence. That was recognizably absent.
Yes.
To talk about voice and AI together.
Yes, and it's surprising because again, this was their golden opportunity to do so, and nothing. So that's kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
We did see some of the other things that we've talked about recently when it comes to where conversational AIs are going. We saw some echoes of that here as well. So, for example, Bard are getting extensions, which are sound an awful lot like ChatGPT's plugins.
Yeah.
The exact differences we don't know yet because there's been no details announced. We see, for example, that they have made the model that's behind Bard is now available for developers to work with. In fact, there are 2 different APIs that developers can work with to use that. So that's interesting and exciting and a good thing. But it's, and there were lots of cool demonstrations of what they're doing with AI.
Right.
But I feel like, this whole notion of an assistant somehow got lost in here, and that's disappointing in many ways.
Yeah, because it definitely seems like, oh, this app gets AI and this app gets AI and this app gets AI. Which
Well,
would be helpful. You're writing an email and you can get some assistance on writing a job post or answering replying. I thought it was interesting, like a context from a previous email could be used as input into generating a response to that email. So that's type of things, talking about like integration with Google Sheets and formulas. There were, different talks about
and
different.
that's right up my alley.
It is. It's totally. I was wondering if there was anything new that you had learned from that yet, or if you're still trying to get information on that.
I'm still trying to get some information on that, and access in other ways.
Right.
But also one of the interesting things that I saw them talking about, for example, is that Bard and the Palm model behind Bard knows, as they talked about, what was it, 20 programming languages now?
Yeah.
But one of those programming languages is Google Sheets.
Yeah, I did hear that, and I was like, interesting that that's elevated at the same level as a programming language, and it's seeming like they're doing things like you can get links to references of where code came from, if
Yes.
I understood correctly, and then they're also talking about like natural languages. Was it 140 plus
So this
languages
is,
that it's trained on?
you could be right, and I may have forgotten the exact number. What I was thinking is that the news came out, one of the bits of news that came out is that Bard itself is now more widely available. So it's now available in over 140 countries.
Oh, okay. Maybe I had conflated that with the number of languages it could
Right. So
translate
so
to.
so currently it's available in over 140 countries. Um, they've added 2 new languages, Japanese and Korean, and they have 40 new languages coming soon.
Oh, okay. All right. That sounds more right. Thank you.
But there are interesting elements there as well. So although there are 140 countries that you can access it from, Canada's not one of them, and none of the EU countries are one of them. Those are all excluded for now.
Oh, is that because of privacy?
It's something about that, and the exact details I don't know about, but I've
Yeah.
heard people from in the EU region talk about how it's not necessarily privacy, but where the data is hosted.
Oh, yeah.
So there are agreements about where data is allowed to be stored when dealing with some international ones, and the EU has rules about storing EU data in the EU.
So you're talking about more like GDPR stuff.
I've been told this isn't GDPR.
Oh, okay.
GDPR is more privacy as opposed to data provenance, but this is not my field, so I may be completely
All right.
wrong. So there are certainly lots of interesting things that are there and are coming, but also a lot of interesting quirks like that. One of the neat things, though, is they've opened up one of the things they call labs. So you can now sign up for different experiments that are available. So there is now conversational search, which is different from Bard. Bard is not being pushed as a search engine, it's more of a conversational system.
Interesting.
To do search, you would go to Google search, and if you have that experiment enabled, when you ask a question, it may offer to have a conversation with you about what you're searching for. And you can see this now, and there's a little Flask experiment, like Flask, in the upper right hand corner of Google search, which you can click on and it'll take you, for most people, to the wait list. There's also an experiment in Google Workspace called Project Tailwind, where you give Tailwind access to your documents, and then you can do queries based on your documents.
Oh, sounds like a vector database
Yeah,
integration,
it sounds a
maybe.
lot like a vector database. Interesting, right?
Right.
Um, so we'll see where that goes. They were billing it as, students can take notes all year, and then at the end of the year be able to ask it questions, and all of the notes will come together to help bring out answers. Interesting
I,
approach, but I can think of a ton of other uses.
yeah, I was like, I would have found that useful for school, just kind of prepping for finals or different tests. Like, oh wow, how do these things relate now? It's been 3 months since I looked at over this topic, and now it's not fresh on my mind. But you can start asking questions and kind of like refresh your memory on different things. I could see that
Right.
would be really useful.
Or if you can think of researchers who were, taking notes, and they're compiling notes, and indexing where they are, and you used to put these on note cards,
Yeah,
and then say, well, wait a minute, I know I read somewhere something about this. What was it, and where did I put that card?
yeah, yeah,
And now you've got a quick way to search your own notes.
yeah. I can see that.
That's and search them very naturally, and put things together. That's a really, really powerful thing. I think that's a more interesting than some of the things they were talking about, and some of the things that Microsoft has been talking about with its Office 365 integration.
Yeah.
Tailwind seems really powerful. But on the subject of vector databases, we talked last week, or on last week's episode anyway, we were talking about vector databases, and we were talking about how we suddenly discovered that Google had a vector database.
And didn't even know it.
And we didn't know it, and apparently nobody else did either, because that wasn't mentioned at all at Google I/O. But what was mentioned were the fact that some of the PaLM models, the same models that are behind Bard, are available for developers to use, and one of them is an embedding model. So as we kind of forecast a little bit last week, or hypothesized last week, we now have one of the big cloud providers offering both a vector database and an embedding system.
Yeah.
So so now it's a one-stop shop. It's not integrated yet, but it is a one-stop shop for these services.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see where that goes within the next couple of weeks. I have
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. Yeah. We'll just kind of see what type of experimenting you can do with that. It did seem that AI, or at least they were pointing out that AI was touching lots of things, from photos to maps to, like you say, Bard. So those were all, kind of interesting, because sometimes it's hard to grasp. You're like, well, we've got these models, but what can we do with these models? And a lot of the things that we talk about, since we've been in the voice area, which it would be like natural language processing. So we're talking about voice, and we're talking about text. But there is still a lot that's going on with images, and starting to even be more with video. So that's going to be interesting to kind of see how that goes. And it's kind of neat to see just some examples of it being used to say, oh, these are the types of things that I can do with this technology on these different types of file types or form factors.
Yes, one of the other neat things is that they talked about how that now that these text models are being made available to developers, there are more models in the pipeline. So Bard itself, there's a new model for Bard that's coming called Gemini, and it's a more multimedia oriented
Oh, that
model.
would be interesting. Yeah.
But you'll be able to do things, and this is one of the things they kind of previewed, was load in a picture and say, ask questions about the picture, or load in a picture and say, put these two, put the person in this picture in this frame, in front of a background like this, and do that conversationally. and get results back that are multimodal. So there's interesting things that will be coming there, but also things like, right now Google makes a lot, talks a lot about how you can have this magic eraser
Yeah.
and, erase background parse around. Well, what if they add more capabilities there, and what if that becomes a conversational interface? So instead of saying, circling it and finding the right button to press, you can say things like, delete this,
Yeah.
move this over here, and see what it does. So they are kind of grasping this notion of conversational interfaces in some things and using them in powerful ways.
One of the things that I saw that that's interesting to me, but that I haven't really seen that much of talked about with all the, talking about ChatGPT or all these different models, is that they have MedPalm, which is a medical large language model. So you could start asking questions of, about medical topics and things, which I'm assuming that in conjunction with that, there will be all the HIPAA protections and things like that, so that they could be used. But it is interesting to start seeing that come to the surface, kind of the more of the forefront.
Yes, one of the things that's really nice, and I'm really curious to see where MedPalm goes and what some of these, I would say, I don't know, we have a name for them yet. We know Palm, we call Palm a foundation model, and we talk about how we can train it with our own data. And that's not a subject we've talked about yet much,
Yeah.
but that we can, that we should at some point. But here's a case where we've got something that started as a foundation model, but then also has some additional training. Is that, a pre-tuned foundational model? Can it take more tuning? Can I give it more of my own
Yeah.
medical data, but it's already got a foundation in some medical item? I don't know. These are great questions.
Yeah, because for heart surgery is a lot different than pediatrics, right? So there's lots of different specialties in the medical world. So it would be pretty big ask to have one model that would be able to do it all. And so how could those be trained for specific purposes?
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
a doctor. I don't play one on TV. But I also imagine that the medical industry as a whole has some common terms, has
Yeah.
some common ways of talking. There's English and there's medical English, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think if you think of a pre-trained model that knows medical English, it now knows, and I put that in quotes again, how to say things in a way that a doctor would understand, as opposed to a patient.
Yeah.
Or would be able to, and again, quotes, understand a doctor's phrasing, where a normally trained one might not fully understand, might not fully have those word associations correctly set up in it. So I don't know. Maybe, I'm hopeful that's along the lines of what MedPalm has.
Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of talk about them almost like they're two different languages, because one of the things that language models do well is translation. And so, I'm having a conversation with my doctor, and she or he is saying things the way that doctors say them, and you're like, I'm getting every fragments of what you're saying, but to be able to have that translation happen, so you're like, oh, okay, that's what you're talking about. All right. Yeah, because doctors want to be very precise and have exact names for things, and you're like, that's a problem with my left knee, or something like that, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it also says that, here's a potential model, and now they've got a framework with Vertex AI to let people access other models.
Yeah.
And I think that's, powerful. So as
Yeah.
new models come online, as people can get access to them in a consistent way and not need to know what in the world, not need to know the details of how to run a model. You just have an API that you can call
Yeah.
with your prompt and get a response and say, oh, this is a medical question, so use MedPalm instead of regular Palm.
Yeah.
That
Well,
I think will be powerful.
yeah, I would agree. Well, and it's interesting because even in some of the explanation that sounds like they had from different people on the MedPalm team, I don't know if it was a slip up or just kind of because there were like things that we couldn't even do like 3 or 4 months ago. So it kind of seems like I don't know, maybe there has been this new push of focus, and maybe there was some sort of a breakthrough, but it does really seem like um, some of these bigger companies, including Google, are like, oh, we really just need to get running on this and put more energy and more focus on it, where maybe they weren't before.
Well, I think also there's the question of, even if they had, maybe now they need to make more of an effort to make sure people are aware of it.
Yeah.
So for example, they were talking about some models that were doing speech to text. Well, they've had a speech to text API. It's not new,
Yeah.
but people may have been unaware of it before. And now maybe they're more aware of it because of all of the talk that's been going on.
Yeah, I can see that.
And maybe, and hopefully, it works better. Now that attention's being paid to it, they realize they need to dedicate more resources to make it better because people are going to be using it more.
Right. And and people are going to be pushing the envelope, because I think more and more developers, from companies to product teams to projects that they're working on, are thinking, I've got this great data, and how can I utilize AI to make it, I could push that data more, understand it better, a more natural interface to access it. They're just trying to think of ways that that AI can improve things. And I'm not saying that AI is a solution to everything, but I think there's a lot that you can do with AI that we really just hadn't considered before in our application development. And now it's kind of like on everybody's roadmap to figure out, how do I AIify my
Well, I
my
think what it
project?
is, and I think we're going to have more conversations about this, because I feel like this is really where my big AI push is heading towards. That AI lets us do things in ways, do things in ways that we couldn't do before.
Right.
So we had all of this data, and we'd say, like, we want to do something with, we want to do X with it, but man, that's hard.
Yeah.
That requires some leaps here. And now we can say, well, it's not trivial, but we now have the tools to make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what, people are making fun of Sundar for saying AI, a few dozen times. But I think that's kind of what this IO was really about, was saying things that are important to people that were really hard to do before are now easier.
Yeah.
And it's easier for Google to do, and it's easier for us as developers to do. And that's kind of what we always meant when we said voice first, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That I feel like we're getting close to that now, and I just wish they'd give us the voice platform to do it on.
Yeah.
But
I agree. Yeah, it's kind of sad on the voice side of things, but heavy on the AI. So
yes,
kind of a mixed bag, but still interesting. Just kind of, all the hardware stuff aside, there was just a lot of good information from this conference.
yep. So I think you asked me initially how I felt what the vibe was this year. So I attended it at a watch party in New York, in Google's offices in New York. And I was hoping for more of an excited crowd that left there really charged, and people kind of wandered out. Okay. And I kind of wandered out. Okay. When I wandered out. And it's only been on reflection that I'm like, the Vertex AI stuff. I'm excited as a developer to see that. Having access to the models myself, that's exciting. And other things are cute. Other things are neat. I think Tailwind is going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see it and play with it. As developers, there were some other things they talked about how Bard now knows, I think I said 20 programming languages, but also, and this was an interesting kick that I thought I saw, they were talking about how you would be able to take that model called Cody and integrate it yourself. So the Cody model would be available to you through Vertex AI. And you would be able to fine tune it with your own code. And once you fine tune it with your own code, you can now start asking it questions about your code, about where do we how do we do this transformation? Well, you do it in this function here. Oh, how do we call that? Oh, here's how you set up that call. So it's not just one of the things that we saw with Codex and with what GitHub is doing is they're basically providing a way to ask questions while you code, but not on your code. This takes it another step.
Yeah, because I, just recently having to bring a new developer up on an existing code base, that's could be a 2 to 3 hour meeting going through and saying, okay, here from a high level, here's overall how the project is structured. Okay, now let's go into this part. This is this module, and this is kind of how it fits overall, and then talk about some details of it. And being able to ask questions about your code and like where in the code does this, or how do we tackle this situation, or different things like that. Or even if like a migration, like I'm doing this language, but we're going to migrate this portion over into a different service that's in a different language for some reason. And so it would be interesting to be able to ask questions about your own code and get kind of a conversation about that.
I was going to say, it's not just questions about your code, it's having a conversation about your code.
Yeah.
And that can be pretty neat. So, there were exciting elements like that. But overall, there was also a lot of just kind of staring at this screen going, why are you just talking on and on about this? And the example I keep giving about this is Android will now have the feature that you can give it a prompt and it will generate a lock screen photo for you based on that prompt. And okay, that's cool. That's a clever example of how to do text to image generation. But that's not a major feature of an operating system. It's a cute gimmick. Okay. And I'm sure people are going to love it, but it's a cute gimmick.
Yeah, it's not like going to overwhelmingly change your life with AI,
right?
To be able to customize your lock screen.
So that's kind of my feeling about how I/O was this year, and I'm really hopeful though that next year, we'll be able to have more people at Shoreline. I'll be able to talk to engineers and so forth about what's going on and really start getting into some of the tooling. And I really, really hope next year we have an assistant.
Yeah, that's a big question. There big things are happening next month with the deprecation of Google Actions, and
we'll be talking about that next month. So
yes, we will. So yeah, I think it's definitely interesting, and yeah, hopefully like between the checkpoint here and this time next year, models will and APIs will be available, tools will be and services will be able to be available, and we'll be able to start seeing how people are using it, and doing some work with it ourselves, and just kind of see how much a year changes our view on AI and where it's going and how it's how it's progressing. So
it will hopefully be an interesting year.
yeah. And
So
yeah, we'll would love to have everybody's feedback on what they thought of Google I/O, on what they're excited about, what they're interested in just in general with AI or with voice, and where that's going. So definitely follow up with us. Check you can check us out on Twitter or LinkedIn. You can find us many different ways. But we would love to be able to help you out and just kind of continue this conversation offline.
yep. And if there's any really exciting stuff, we'll bring it back here online at Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, Alan.
Take care, Mark. Have a great week.
You too. Thank you.